Hello. Thanks very much for joining us. Really nice to see you all here. So we are going to talk to you today about A Rainbow for a Marla. My name's Katie, this is Sudha, and this is John. And A Rainbow for a Marla is an interactive storybook for primary age kids exploring climate impacts through storytelling, animations and puzzles. And we've just got a little video to show you, which we hope will give you a bit of an intro to the project. From that kind of desire to do something came this project, which involves children and asks them their opinions about climate change, how they feel about it, what they're concerned about, and tries to tell a different story to the one that is quite prevalent in sort of climate debate in the UK.
A Rainbow for a Marla is a storybook which has as its main characters 3 children: Nafisa, who's from a British Bangladeshi background, Kareem, his British Pakistani background, and Amala, who's a climate migrant from Somalia. You know, these are children from backgrounds that normally don't have stories written about them where they're the central characters. And it's about their friendship and how they're growing awareness about how climate change is actually affecting their everyday lives.
Throughout the book are scattered QR codes. And so you scan a QR code, that takes you to what we call a micro website. And that either contains a puzzle for you to solve using the book to solve that puzzle, or short animation clips that explain what's going on in the book further.
Answers only come when you stop looking for them.
You always talk in riddles, Nani.
The fact that you're on the journey and you're solving the puzzle yourself kind of embeds you in that much more, so it's much more of an experience.
People will be able to sort of play it in their home with their parents and grandparents and actually encourage a conversation about the climate, but in a way that maybe diffuses anxiety and makes people feel like they can do something, however small. So we hope that the book will be that kind of catalyst.
Look at the sky, there's a rainbow. Like the name of our school. It's a rainbow for you, Amala.
To celebrate friendship.
And my family's new life in this welcoming city, Birmingham.
Okay, hopefully that's given you a bit of a sense of what that is. So just going to briefly introduce ourselves, and then we're going to give you a bit more information about how we made it. I'm a theatre maker. I'm Katie Day. I'm a theatre maker and a creative director, and I make work where theatre and storytelling meets new technologies with the aim of making magical, immersive experiences. I'm artistic director of The Other Way Works, who's produced this book, and I've been making genre-defying interactive performances for 20 years. Most memorably, Avon Calling, which was an Avon Cosmetics party meets one-woman show performed in audience members' own living rooms. Black Tonic, an offbeat thriller performed undercover in the bedrooms and corridors of hotels. And A Moment of Madness, which is a political spy thriller where a playing audience staked out a multi-storey car park in real time from inside anonymous parked cars. I'm also a postgraduate researcher just beginning a practice as research PhD in how immersive theatre can play a powerful role in communicating the climate crisis. Sudha.
Hello, yes, I'm Sudha, and I'm an actor and a playwright. As an actor, I've worked in theatre, TV, radio, and I'm also the co-founder of Tamasha Theatre Company. And I've founded a company called Butcher Boulevard. So as a writer, I mean, in everything I do, who I am is the reason I've got into this profession. I'm actually a graduate in maths and sociology. And as my school friends will tell you, you were so timid at school. You're literally the last person we expected to be in this profession. But it's literally, I'm here because coming from East Africa, having lived in India, in a way, joining theatre kind of made me find out about myself, like how we are here, how our histories are linked. So a couple of memorable projects that I've written that are memorable to me, inspired by my children. One of them is called Child of the Divide, and it's inspired by a short story by Bisham Sahani, which is about a lost Hindu boy who ends up getting left behind in what now becomes Pakistan. And it's the narratives of 5 children, but it's the story of the partition of India without Jawaharlal Nehru or Gandhi, you know. But this is what one of the biggest compliments for me is from my peer and friend Carl Miller, who's sitting there, who describes my work as epic in miniature. So I'll take that. I'm currently doing a one-woman show, which is called Evening Conversations, and it's inspired by the conversations with my sons. So as one of my sons says, you know, so what do you want? What do you want from us? You want to steal our dialogue again? Yeah, well, it's liquid gold, bro. Drink it in. So I'm a magpie who steals dialogue.
Hi there, I'm John. I am a game designer and software developer. And originally I come from the AAA games, video games industry. So I worked on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and then mobile games. There's just 3 projects just up on the screen just to demonstrate my transition, I guess, to immersive theatre. So the first project I made was back in 2012, which is Renga, which is the one that's on the far left on your side. It's a 500-player collaborative game designed for cinemas, like a feature-length experience. And the transition there for me was, instead of selling games through the App Store or through, back when we had physical game stores, that you had to buy a ticket to the event. So that was my kind of transition into kind of making games where you had to buy a ticket. The project in the center is fairly traditional of the games that I make at the moment. That's for Tamworth Castle. It's like a semi-automated escape room. And I still do quite a lot of work for museums that want immersive or interactives. And then the project on the far right is a kind of live one now. That's for Blast Theory, if you've come across them. So we've helped them to reimagine a project called Can You See Me Now, which is a game of hide and seek. And the difference there is that lots of the stuff that Blast Theory do are both digital and analog at the same time. So half of the players, the seekers, are in the real world, and they have an online players that are hiding. So if you back the Kickstarter, you can play that this week. And if you didn't, you can play, I think, London in mid-November, that'll be. And this is a moment of madness. This is a project that Katie and I worked on with Tim Wright. It's a project that we like so much that we've made 3 different versions of it now. The original live immersive experience is a political spy thriller, and the main action is where the players are in a car park. They're on a stakeout across 6 different cars. The players find a burner phone in their car, and that allows them wider access to the story world. So I really love talking about this game because it's got some really interesting game mechanics, but we're not really here to do that today. So if you want to learn more about that, come and find us. Or one of the other versions we made is A Moment of Madness on Demand. That still exists. You might not be able to scan the QR code from there, but if not, you can go online and search for that. That game is free and available. It's not quite in a car park. You do it from the comfort of your own home, but it's still got the same ideas in it.
Okay, so why a book? That might feel like it's a long way from the last project that John and I made together, which was this spy thriller. But actually, it's a little bit closer together than you might think. So when we started out making A Moment of Madness, it was actually a physical object, game in a box idea. And that's kind of where we first started with Moment of Madness. And so with this book, A Rainbow for a Mala, we're kind of coming back to a kind of physical object, play anytime, self-facilitating work. The other thing is that thematically, they're quite similar. So I guess this is where it feeds into why I want to do a PhD about how immersive theatre helps to communicate about the climate crisis. One of the main themes in A Moment of Madness was about the climate crisis, really, and the political aspects of that. And then here we're looking at that in a slightly more age-appropriate way for children. and family audiences. And so, oh yeah, John, here we go, John's got the book there. One of the benefits to us of the book form was that it's a familiar form to audiences. Reading storybooks to children is a common family activity. It's a simpler structure, which is more suitable for children. So, a book is usually linear, I guess, unless you're playing Choose Your Own Adventure. But it gives you a lot more cues than if you were just having a box of objects that you had to kind of puzzle through, which an adult might be more comfortable with. And it's also easier and cheaper to replicate and disseminate than a live performance, which can be very costly, or a boxed product, again, which is harder and more expensive to duplicate.
Sure, so you're very welcome to scan the QR code if you want to get an experience of one of the animated scenes. If you do that, could I ask you just to turn your phone down, because it will make some noise. But there are subtitles, so you can still follow along. So the book is probably a lot more than the book. It's quite a slim book, and that kind of undersells what you're actually getting. So as well as the kind of 100 pages of physical content, there are 11 animated scenes and 5 digital interactives that you get to play. So there's actually about 20 minutes of additional, almost like a radio play with accompanying animation content that you get from it. So if you did anyone manage to scan the QR code from distance? Okay, it worked from So you should have got a very short 30-second clip, and some of the scenes are much longer in the actual finished book.
So, to begin the process, I mean, one of the things built into this project was that we were going to co-create it with children who went from year 4 to year 6 in primary schools. So we found a school in Birmingham in Small Heath, which is called Regent's Park Primary. And the area there, you can see the impact of a high level of social deprivation. The majority of children in that school were from global majority backgrounds. They also had, family connections that go back to countries like Bangladesh, Somalia, Pakistan, countries which are feeling the impact of climate change on a disproportionate level to the contribution that they have made to it. So that was, very much the setting, and the kids that we met were the direct inspiration for the characters of the show. The show, I call it, because I do see it as a show. The young people, Nafisa, Kareem, and Amala, they're directly based. I mean, not one person, but a composite of kids that we met that inspired the work. And I was also very keen, partly because I'm the oldest of us 3, for it to be intergenerational. So there's an older grandmother who was very much directly inspired by, well, a bit myself, but the girl who did our engagement in the schools, Fatia, her mother, who had an allotment.
Yeah, so we worked with children, and if anyone knows any children, they'll know that they don't hold back with feedback. So, sometimes it's quite hard to get feedback out of adults, isn't it, when you make immersive experiences? Everyone's a bit polite. They've learnt the social codes. They've learnt to say, only you could have made that show. So what we did with the kids was we worked with them on so many different levels to kind of collaborate to make the work. So we chose subject matter that they cared about. They told us that they cared about this. We developed realistic characters based on them. We wrote dialogue and speech that sounded like them. We worked, in collaboration to pitch the games and the puzzles and the interactives at an appropriate level of difficulty for their age group. And we checked that they enjoyed playing and solving them. Did they like these games? Were they fun? We did this by running lessons in the school with the kids. We did loads of different types of sessions with them, like acting out written scenes, getting them to script edit for us, make suggestions. We did whole improvised scenes with them. We designed characters. They drew illustrations, some of which make it into the final product. We play-tested games and puzzles, and they gave us brutal feedback on how they did or didn't like our games and how much they wanted more levels and things like that. But also lots of stuff that totally influenced how they came about. And they also talked to us about their lives. their hopes, their dreams, their worries. Sudha is excellent at dragging this kind of stuff out of them. And from all of that, Sudha wrote the story.
So as you saw in the video, the story is, you know, the central characters are Amala, Nafisa, and Kareem. And the story, the inciting incident, is when the kids are having to write a poem, a haiku poem, celebrating their names. And they're sitting in a circle, because this school, as in our fictional school, has a forest school, which is this beautiful space outside. They're writing a poem about their name, and Amala tears up her poem, and she throws it into the fire pit. Thankfully, there isn't a lit fire, and then she runs away. So the other two friends want to find out what's happening, and so they piece together her poem. And then we join Nafisa and Kareem in their quest to put a smile back on Amala's face. So am I doing, okay, so this is me as well. So writing for interaction, you know, I have never been commissioned something like this. I work a lot from research and magpieing and recording and verbatim. So in a way, I brought that practice and that inquiry, which is, you know, the same thing, but this collaboration was from the beginning, you know, a three-way thing. And what we also did was we did it iteratively. So we wrote the prototype first. So the incident that I described where Amala tears up her poem, in the first bit, we wrote, yeah, this is the prototype. So we actually thought, well, this would make a really good puzzle. We got the kids to draw that. So one of the children's drawing was then torn up and made into a jigsaw puzzle. Then the children, in the first iteration, they really enjoyed playing that puzzle. And it was this beautiful poem, which was, you know, there's a broken heart and a rainy cloud, and you know that there's this internal story of Amala. So all of that became very intrinsic to the prototype. And then there was a year's gap. And so when I came back to it, it was like, okay, we've got X money, so, you know, let's use what we already have. So we already have this lovely game, and you'd written a bit of stuff before and after. So very differently to how I would normally make a story, we knew we had the thing, and then we made a story around it. But it was one of the central stories that, you know, inspired us. So Amala is a girl, you know, we find out, spoiler alert? No, maybe not spoiler alert. Okay, so she obviously has a backstory of, you know, why she was sad, which is the central kind of narrative. But then I come back to my practice of, you know, we do need to sort of still find out what her want is, what her needs are, whether she gets that. So the lovely Carl Miller came and did a session with us about, you know, setting up the story. And what the kind of conflicts are, what the, you know, ups and downs are, and that's where we got to. I suppose the main thing to sort of take away is that in this way of working, the how that you're telling the story is there at the heart at the same time as the what and the why. And that's what I found, you know, completely different. But otherwise, it was, I brought my practice, I magpied, I love the way the children speak, and I would just steal that. And so in some of the scenes, you know, the kids who inspired it were delighted that, you know, their dialogue had made it.
Thanks.
So I'll talk a little bit about the puzzles and the tech briefly. I don't know if anyone recognizes these books. This is a series of Usborne. There's a couple of people nodding. Amazing. So like there's been a kind of new wave of like puzzle books over the past kind of 7 to 10 years. But these things aren't new, right? These have been around since I was a child. Those are from the 80s, those books, if you haven't come across them. If you want to look at them, come and find me afterwards. So we started by taking those puzzle books in and a bunch of kind of more modern ones and a bunch of kind of physical activities for them to do. And the kids kind of played with them, and we learned a lot, obviously, just by letting them kind of play and watch. And the brief headline, I guess, takeaways is that we saw some resistance towards reading. And, I mean, that's not a big surprise, given that it's kind of forced on them at every stage at kind of primary school, and some fairly mixed abilities in reading. They really loved puzzle solving, but they didn't like the struggle to solve a puzzle, which we'll kind of come back to. Whereas I would say the
the achievement of solving the puzzle is often related to the struggle that you go through to kind of solve the puzzle. The kids didn't want that struggle. They wanted the result, but without the kind of pain that goes into it. And they obviously all very much engaged with all the digital puzzles that we gave them. So we went into the school, we worked closely with them, and they showed them different versions of these, and we had the brutal feedback, obviously, and we ended up with sort of 5 different interactives. It obviously would have been a lot easier for us to have one interactive repeated, but no, obviously that's not the way we work. So you'll see on the screen there we've got a kind of classic interactive game where the kids are filling up a bug hotel. The middle one is a kind of chat bot where you're finding out information related to the story. And on the right is I'd say a more traditional code-breaking puzzle that you'd get in an escape room. So I'm about to talk about the technology for just a couple of minutes. If that's not your thing, feel free to scan the QR code and play the jigsaw game while I do that. I'll be giving that, so let me actually give you time to scan it, rather than that being an empty promise. If not, you'll get a chance to play it afterwards anyway. Hold on, actually, lots of people are taking me up on this offer.
Well,
okay.
People can do 2 things, maybe.
Okay, I'll carry on talking. So one of the big challenges with this is actually how do we decide to go from the book in the kind of physical sense to the digital medium, the phone. And so there are 2 classic ways of doing this. One, which is to use a native app, so the kind of thing you find in the App Store or on the Play Store, or whether you go for these kind of lots of mini micro websites or microsites, mobile web apps. And actually, we've seen a move away from native apps, really, except for things like our banking app and things. But games are still an area where we still use native apps, and there's probably a good case for using a native app for this particular book, because ultimately you do one big download up front, and then you've got all the content on your phone, and off you go. It does introduce a bit of a delay getting started in that case, whereas, as hopefully you found out with the QR codes, some of you have got your heads down trying to solve a jigsaw, I can see, well done. The immediacy of being able to get access to that is quite appealing, particularly if you are working, if when you're playing the games, you're working with people of a different generation who might not be so familiar with apps. And also, the audience that we were trying to deliver to, some of them won't have access to the latest mobile phones. And so having it via a mobile web app gave us more availability. A tiny bit on the game design challenges. So with all of these things, right, I'm sure there's puzzle designers in the room. Making random puzzles that sit on their own is kind of fairly straightforward for us. Making more interesting puzzles, as we mentioned earlier with kids, where we want them to struggle, we want the players to use their intuition, and we want them to get that eureka moment, right? That's a bit harder to do, but obviously the payoff is that much greater. And our challenge as a game designer is to make people get to that stage of eureka, but making them feel like they did that on their own, right? And so then the hardest level of puzzles for us is to do all of that kind of stuff and also keep it within the story world. The challenge being is that we don't really face puzzles in our day-to-day life. So like, the puzzles that we face in escape rooms are kind of quite obtuse things. So the puzzles themselves is a challenge, and also where do they fit into the story, right? We don't want to front-load the story with too many puzzles at some point. We've got these 11 pieces of digital content to go in there as well. And at certain times, we need to give the story, which becomes more emotive, a bit more breathing space. So we kept a kind of a spreadsheet of where the digital elements would fit throughout the story to kind of adjust for this flow. Part of creating kind of good and advanced puzzles that are more challenging, where we want our players to struggle, is this ability to be able to hint and to clue them. And those of you from the escape game world know that we can do that with a live games master. Obviously, with the book, we don't have a games master sitting next to you. You might have a grandparent who might help you. So all of our hints, all of our clues have to come within the apps themselves. My general preference is to go with very kind of light touch clues, because I don't want to steal that eureka moment. I don't want to steal that magic of them solving the puzzle for themselves. So all of our hints are essentially within the games, and you'll get those hints the longer you play the games. It detects if you're struggling, and then gives you some more help. I'm going to pass over to you there.
So I suppose just to explain the kind of our approach to this project, this isn't a commercial project. It's not been commissioned by anybody. This is a project that has come, frankly, from my imagination and brought people around it. You know, I'm an artist. I've defined myself as an artist, and this is an arts project. You know, it's come from a creative standpoint in terms of having an output of creative innovation, and also the kind of outcome of educating and inspiring audiences about the climate crisis and hoping to change, you know, attitudes and so on. So I suppose that's just to say that's what this project is for, and that's why we're doing it. And that, I suppose, does impact on the way we behave about how we've developed it. And, you know, all three of us on the stage here have been like the core collaborators, and we've definitely gone, you know, above and beyond any kind of contracted hours to make it work, you know. What we also do is work with other artists and collaborate with them to expand what we could imagine this is and what we could do, and hopefully make briefs for those other artists not too prescriptive, so that they can bring their own creativity to the project. Our biggest issue, I suppose, is coming up against the subsidised arts world budgets. So this project has an absolutely tiny budget when you think about some of the other things that are being talked about today. So, you know, I fundraised £30,000 through the Arts Council, and that is what paid for this phase of the project. So it's a really small amount of money to make something where we have quite a big ambition for what we want to do, and also our levels of expectation around production value just, you know, increase as we go on, really. So I suppose the 30,000 that I'm talking about, that's this phase of the project, and that's kind of run from about the last year up till we finished it in September and launched it. But it did build on a previous phase, which we did in 2022, which had a budget of 15,000. Sorry if this is random, me telling you the amount. So just sort of sometimes it's useful to tell you how much these things cost. So we did this initial R&D for just £15,000 and made that pamphlet that I showed you. So our budget kind of doubled for this phase, but our ambition significantly more than doubled. So, I mean, you know, maybe it's about 8 times more or something like that. We created a huge amount of more content to service really how we wanted the story to be told, but also in terms of the production values, the much, much larger team. And our ambition was outstripping the budget kind of at every point. Kind of probably worse than on any other project before, I feel like. And I don't know whether that's because of the amount of time we've been doing this and the professionalism of the people we're working with, or the cost of living crisis, or, you know, there's lots of different things. And because it's a new format to us. I haven't got much time to say anything else, but essentially I just wanted to say about the fact that we were learning a lot. This is the first time we've ever made a book. So all three of us on this stage have like 20 plus, probably a lot more for Sudha.
40
plus years for Sudha, 20 plus for me, years of making this kind of thing. You know, I've been making immersive theatre for 20 years, but I like to learn new things. So, you know, none of us on this stage has ever written a book. So of course we thought, right, no, why don't we write a book? So we learnt lots, and they're probably standard things. I suppose I'll just give you the headlines. One thing which we didn't do as well as we could was onboarding the team. So we moved from an R&D phase to a bigger phase, and we didn't really stop to recruit the full team and do a solid onboarding. And I think that meant that, you know, if the producers didn't have enough ownership and, you know, maybe it wasn't as collaborative with the other people as possible. That's for lots of reasons, but the team was rather remote on this project, and that meant that I ended up being like, if you imagine a bicycle wheel, I'm sort of in the middle, and everyone's around the outside. So, yeah, okay. We learned lots of things. We have to stop now.
We have to talk about how we celebrated, though, the class of 2024.
We did manage to make our deadline to give it to the kids. You can do the next one if you want. We made our deadline at the end of the summer term to give it to the children that we've been working with. And we gave them the book, and that was a really brilliant moment.
I mean, literally, when they were leaving primary school to go into secondary school, they were called the class of 2020. Their graduation ceremony, they each got a copy of the book that they helped create. Yeah. And you can get a copy
You can buy a copy. You can buy it from
hold
our website. You can, buy it from shops locally in Birmingham. We'd love to talk to more people about it. If anyone knows people who would be interested in having us talk about it at festivals or do workshops or collaborate with them,
And we also brought a few books with us today, so we might have just about judged it right, but if you'd like a copy, we'd very much like you to take one with you. And please play it and then pass it on to someone, because the whole point of the book is climate change. We don't want it to sit on someone's shelf. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We've got them up here, so come and get one.